we're going to move on to the 5G ordinance. Is anyone going to speak to that before we ask for questions?
I guess
Either Elliot.
yeah, I noticed when we got more active with this, it came back, and the person who was up in Mayville who wrote an article originally about the dangers of the 5G.
Right.
Had written another one, plus what we had listened to at the last meeting. I think the only disappointment that I have is with the concerns that have been expressed. It would be nice if we heard from some what I want to say, some practicing scientists or manufacturers, if any of it really holds water.
Well, one of the things I asked Andrew to do, remember the last meeting she presented us, I forget her name now, I apologize, with some articles, and Andrew was, I think, still working on it. He's going to read and summarize them and maybe do a short PowerPoint. Now, it's not ready today. And I did start talking to some people in the industry, and I'm not an expert on this issue either, but my understanding is that while there might be some danger, it's relatively slight. And also my understanding, I think, from all the different conversations we had, is that we as a municipality can't stop this because of safety concerns, if I've got my understanding of the New York law correct. And I think I see Chris and Elliot shaking their heads yes, so maybe I actually learned something.
Yeah, and I heard that before, and I don't necessarily disagree with that, but I don't know, it's like so many other things that we've experienced in history. You know, coal was okay for a long time. No one found out it kills people. Oil has been good, but now we've found that destroys the environment. These kinds of things that they're doing with the 4G, 5G, and what they're going to be doing down the road is only going to make a lot of things better in the whole country or in the whole world. But if there are some things that are dangerous, it'd be nice if somebody would step forward. And I don't really expect that to come from manufacturers to it, because a lot of times the money issue keeps it more or less buttoned up. But I just tend to feel a little, I'm not going to vote against any of this, but I feel a certain apprehension because I'm just not hearing things coming out of other quarters that I would like to.
Yeah, I guess, Jeff, what I would say is everything that we do has danger in it. It's the question of how much danger are we willing to tolerate. I mean, just thinking back to skateboarding. You know, everything that we decide to do has some danger in it. From my research and talking with people, I think the danger with 5G is, I want to say minimal, but I'm not an expert in this field, and maybe, you know, like Chris could speak to that better certainly than I could. And then Andrew's still going to work on that. And at this point, I guess what we're asking, if we're in agreement with the ordinance that's in front of us, we're recommending it to the city council, and so then they still got to go through their process. So if we should uncover substantial dangers, which I think is highly unlikely, you know, we still can put the input, and even, you know, Andrew's thing or his project could go to city council too. So I think we're trying to take those concerns seriously. We're not dismissing them, but I think well, if we're comfortable, we need to proceed, but I'm not going to presume that. So I don't know, Chris, did you want to add anything to this?
Sure, I'll add a couple of things. One, the FCC, you know, they regulate all the spectrum of all the electromagnetic radiation in the environment. This includes like your FM radio, your AM radio, 3G, 4G, 5G, 6G, whatever G you want to talk about. They license the frequencies. They define exposure limits. There's a whole bunch of theory and as well as testing that goes on to vet this technology. It is a new technology, and the reason why we're even talking about it now is because the conversations we've had with Verizon and wanting to be open to the new technology from a business development perspective. We've had a lot of issues in our community with access to high-speed internet and people not either getting overcharged by the local providers or not having access to it at all. And this is another opportunity to have high-speed broadband for our community members. The other thing the other opportunity it presents itself to is increased revenue for the city through pole attachments and as well as licensing each individual location. So there is a benefit here, and the main purpose of this ordinance is to define how they can come in and be competitive. Because the other piece of it is the way some cities have done it is just having contracts with individual companies. The downside of that is it doesn't create a competitive landscape for multiple vendors to come in and compete. Creating an ordinance gives you that opportunity to have competition, and I think that's probably one of the biggest reasons to have an ordinance is to create an environment that is fair and even playing field for everyone, and they know what the rules are. It also defines all the fees, so there's no surprises to anybody going down through the process. It defines a lot of the standards that protect the city's infrastructure and right of way, so that we're not giving anything up in the process either. So yeah, it's kind of background, I guess.
Thanks.
And we do have existing. So one of the main differences between small cell, they call them small cell, but it's basically a small cell tower. The cell towers that you see they call them macro towers. The amount of energy that those put out compared to these smaller ones are very different. The larger ones, you have really long, very high distance approach distances. You can't come close to the radio towers because of the intensity. These smaller ones, the reason why there's going to be so many of them is because they're much lower in intensity. They also have a different frequency that doesn't travel through barriers as well. So like your radio, you can get in your house pretty easily, even if you're sitting in the basement. When you get to the smaller waves, they don't go through hard material well. So like they'll reflect off glass, they won't go through trees. So you need antennas more frequently to get to the end users. So that's kind of the main difference. We already have some 4G small cell towers in Jamestown, and maybe you've seen them, maybe you haven't. They're little boxes on poles, and those are used in areas where they need more bandwidth without wanting to put a big cell tower there because the current technology requires these big towers. The new technology doesn't. So
Thanks, Chris.
And if I could add, Chair and Rob, one of the things that was brought up last time, which I did look into a little bit, was the city possibly having liability issues when it comes to the new 5G technology. With the state sponsorship of the technology, if there was certain health conditions that are affected by 5G, that would be the liability of the carriers as well as the state of New York.
Thank you. I like your window, by the way, Elliot.
Thank you. The old Jamestown architecture.
Yeah,
That's
great. Well, let me open it up to questions from the commission for Ellen, Elliot, Chris, anybody who wants to weigh in on this.
After reading all that's been submitted, I really don't have any questions, only that concern that sometimes there doesn't seem to be enough information coming from the other side. But I think it's from what I read and the comments that have been made in the past, I have no reservations about going forward.
But Jeff, when you said the other side, I assume you meant the industry, not, another form of life that we don't know.
Yeah, it goes back, maybe a long time ago, but I can remember sometimes when we were building hot rods and stuff, people would have concerns about something and it would get discussed. And you would have it on kind of coming on both sides. Is it a good idea? Is it a bad idea? And how you get it done. And I just don't hear that, especially out in more public kinds of things anymore. And
yeah, but at our meetings, we had the industry, we had those people who objected to it for safety concerns. I think we've all spent a lot of time on it. I think our commission has done a good job of not delaying this to delay it, but doing our due diligence to understand what's entailed here with my case going all the way back to, I remember a summer phone conversation with Chris back in July or August. So I think there's been a lot of questions, good questions asked, technical and otherwise. So, and I appreciate your comments. I think my concern is that as long as we're comfortable, we think we did our job, then we can hand it over to the council, then they got to do their job. So.
I agree with that, and I'm not trying to hold anything up. And
no, I know.
I was thinking about last meeting, and Mike had really gone through so much detail in there that he even was down to dotting the I's properly. So I think it's good, and I read through it again, or looked through it and read it and stuff, and I don't have any reservations.
Okay.
It's just a disappointment as to what I think I see out in the general public on disseminating information nowadays, as compared to what I felt used to.
Well, you know what? It goes back even to the earlier projects. It's hard to keep up with all this stuff just at the local level, but that's good because that means Jamestown is busy trying to do a lot of good stuff. So. Try to keep up with that, and then the state stuff, and the COVID, and the national stuff. I mean, it's a full agenda. So, you know, and fortunately, at least up to so far, you know, I think the Post Journal has done. I try to read the articles. Has done a pretty good job of reporting on our discussions. So, if people choose to stay informed, the stuff's there. But
and there was a lot of discussion in public media in 2019. I think it was in the August timeframe when the FCC order originally came out. So if you do a little digging in 2019, I think you'll find there was a lot that went on during that time period. And now I think the industry's just been kind of collecting their cash and getting ready to actually build it.
Sure. And I think it's exciting for Jamestown to be in the forefront of this. So if that's what
can I just quick mention that I think the commission has done a pretty thorough job in looking into this, and I've had a conversation with Chris, and I feel good about you know, in regards to safety, and I feel good about moving forward, and I love the idea that it would create competition in this field too, which I think we need for consumers.
Yep.
Well, given all the benefits we have now with the new electronics, another step forward is good.
Mm-hmm.
So it's only going to get better.
I had a couple just like questions or trying to make sure I'm understanding everything. The first is just on page 17, there's a spelling error. Under paint, it says rush peeling paint instead of rust. That's the second to last paragraph.
Which paragraph, Mike? Sorry.
The what?
The last paragraph?
Second to the last paragraph.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I see it.
I just assumed that was paint that was in a hurry to.
Mike, were you trained as a school teacher?
No, that's why I married one.
No, but he's reading this the way I read my students' assignments, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
And then on page 16, the last, under pole diameter, section D, it's just a little foggy. It says the maximum pole diameter, including any equipment, is 18 inches. And then the next sentence, it says the maximum allowed diameter necessary to entirely conceal equipment. I just didn't know what the difference was. It's like a structural difference, or?
Yeah, I guess the wording in that probably could be improved. One is some of the equipment is partially enclosed in the pole, so it's like set back into the pole. The other option is it's entirely mounted completely within the shape of the pole. So like you might have like a round one with a box sticking out versus a full round one that has everything that's round all the way down.
And that's probably known in the industry.
I think we could probably make that sound cleaner.
And then my last thing was just trying to understand is just comparing on page 16, the height requirement, section B, to page 8, number 2. And just reading both of them, I don't know, they just don't read similar enough, and I don't know if their intent is to be the same. The one says the same block, the other one says anything adjacent. And it says a maximum of 50 feet, and then on page 8 it says 50 feet or more than 10%, whichever is greater. So is the cap 50, or is it 50 plus 10%?
I thought it was both.
Okay.
And I'm phrasing that as a question, because that's included in B3 on page 16, the 10%, and I thought that's where that circled back to that, but correct me if I'm wrong, Chris.
I think you're right. I think that changed, the language changed because Verizon requested a different wording, so we can clean that up to make sure that they...
Yeah, I remember that being an exchange of something, yeah.
So it must have mentioned in 2 places, we can update.
Yeah.
Okay. But those, otherwise, I mean, everything looked really good, and those are the only
Okay,
things that I was confused about.
okay.
Yeah, you're right. That doesn't make sense. They're different.
Okay.
Okay, so if I heard Mike's comments correctly, we would be cleaning up the language on page 16 under 7, design criteria D, pole diameter. And we would be making the language dealing with height, comparing page 16 with page 8 to be consistent? Is that
Yes,
right?
it would be clearer. The consistency, the intended consistency would be clearer.
Okay, so there's 2 things that have to be cleaned up if I heard Mike's comments correctly.
Yep.
Yeah,
So if we get to the point
in alignment with each other.
Yeah, if we get to the point of recommending this for approval, it would be subject to those 2 changes.
Yes.
Okay, just want to make sure that that's clear. Anything else, Mike?
Nope, that was it.
Anybody else have a question or a comment? Are you trying to talk, John? Oh.
Can you hear me?
I can sort of hear you, but your volume's kind of low.
Sorry about that. Is that any better?
A little bit.
Okay, sorry about that. I had a question about page 12, where it talks about co-location. This is section 6A, I believe.
Uh-huh.
At the end of that first paragraph, it says co-location will be required unless, and then it lists A and B. I think the intent is to require both of those things in order to get an exemption to co-location. So we would want to put probably the word "and" after A, just so it's clear that they have to satisfy both of those requirements.
No, I think it's an or, because one is that they can't, maybe the pole itself isn't physically capable of handling.
Oh, okay.
And then whereas the second one is the owner may not be the city, the owner may be Windstream or somebody else. And if, we can't require them to do something with infrastructure we don't own.
But we want to make it clear that it's A or B.
We can put an or in there, yeah.
Yeah, because I think
That's useful, yeah.
I think right now it's not that clear. Does that help, John?
Yeah, that's what I saw. Thank you.
Anybody else have a question or a comment? Are we ready to proceed? So I would ask for a motion to recommend the ordinance for approval by the city council, subject to the, if I remember correctly, 3 clarifications in 3 different spots that we just discussed on page 8, 12, and 16. Does that sound right?
Yes.
Plus the typo one.
I'm sorry, what?
Plus the typo one, rest.
Oh, yeah, right. Because we want rust, not rush.
Mhm.
Thank you. Can I get a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Nelson. Can I get a second?
Second.
Moved by Mr. Lauren. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye, thank you. And that now goes to the council, so it's for Mr. Nelson and his colleagues to work with.
Well, I'm looking forward to moving this ahead. I think it's a great thing for the city. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's exciting, and I think I want to thank all the commission members for doing the homework so that
Yeah. Well, and I appreciate all of the commission members' work too. And, you know, like I said, it's going to be a good thing for the city. And it's, you know, like I said, it'll be a good thing.
Yeah, so I'm sure the city council may have more questions, but I think I feel comfortable that we certainly did our job in handing it over in much better shape than when we started because of all the questions and comments. So thank you for being so careful. And we'll eventually hear from Andrew too on his project about the safety, which he can still present to us, and Tom, he can hand it over to the council too.
Good.
All right, is there any other business to come before the commission this afternoon? If not, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Nelson, can I get a second?
Second.
Moved by Mr. Lauren, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. The meeting is adjourned. See you soon, I'm sure it's something.
Thank you.
Or on the, you know, at the skate park.
The skate park, yeah.
Great.
Mhm.
All right, thanks everybody.
Thank you.